Let us get started. I think today's topic is nun bet, and since I
Yep,
think that's the case, I assume we got up to the Mishnah.
that's
Um,
correct.
that makes sense. Okay. All good. So I don't know if Ken is there now listening or he's stepped away, but I'll go slowly till he joins because this Mishnah is a continuation of the theme of our parak, Shavua Tov, Ken. I didn't do anything, don't worry. Not the previous Mishnah, but the one before talked about the next level, right? We started off our parak by talking about how you value things and what's proper value. And then we got to some question about what's the consequence of misvaluing things. And we talked extensively, some of us, about what's called onna'ah. Onna'ah means, I think we translate in English as cheating, is how I always translate it. I don't know exactly if it's a great word, but manipulating, being inappropriate, basically. And lo tonu ish et achiv, right? That's what the pasuk says. And basically, onna'ah was a way to cheat someone. So you said, I'm willing to sell you, my car. I got to give you a great deal, $50,000 when it's worth much less. So they didn't have cars, which would have led to a lot more complexity, right? But basically, any item. And so the Mishnah said a sixth was the number we came up with. There was a difference of opinion. Rabbi Tarfon had an opinion, but a third question mark. But if you charge more than that, then sale. If you charge exactly a sixth, then it might be you have an option, etc. Our mission now comes to take this to the next level, because more complex, or not more complex, more accurate than items, right? If you sell, and the Gemara always refers to items as being talit. Yeah. At least that's how our Gemara is going to. Items, coins are supposed to be what they say they are. So if you have a coin that's a sela, and sela was a certain weight essentially of the metal. You have a sela of different metals, but let's say of silver, that had a stamp, etc. But over time, their coins would rub away and would degenerate a little bit, rot a little bit, and lose some value. So what if you pass off, 4 sla'im, but when you go to the bank to weigh them, it turns out it's only 3.8. So is that onna'ah? Now it says our Mishnah, that's where we start. Kama tehei hasela chasera v'lo yehei ba onna'ah. The Gemara is going to ask about the language, right? Before we ask how much it will be onna'ah, here it says, how much can a coin be missing? And a person who passes that coin is not considered to have cheated somebody. Says Rabbi Meir Omer, Arba isarot. 4 isars in a sela, which is an isar ledinar, which, as Rashi will explain for us, is 1/24. Okay, 4%, we're going to call it. Is it 5%? 4%, right? 1/24. So a very small amount. Remember, Ona was 1/6, which is, 15%, 16%. But so this is much less than that. And again, the reason the Gemara is going to explain is because you need coins to be more accurate than regular items. So that's Rabbi Meir. Up to 1 isar for dinar. Rabbi Yehuda says, no, it could be a little bit more than that. Arba punjonot, which is a punyan and dinar. Punyan is double an isar basically. So double, not double. It's not double. It's 1/12. Yeah, it's half. Thank you. It's double. So 1/12 ledinar. So basically, if you cheat, if your sela, instead of being 100 grams, let's say, not that that's the right amount, is really 88 grams, that's considered to be ona'ah. And Rabbi Shimon says, no, it's double that, meaning half of that. Shmona punjonot, 8 punjonot, which is 2 punjanim ledinar, which is a sixth, which is exactly what we had by clothing. So it can be up to a sixth. Fine. So that is the first question. So by money, there seems to be a machloket. I think we're going to ask if it's only by money or also by clothing, but there's a machloket about how much is ona'ah, 1/24th, 1/12th, or 1/6. Continues the Mishnah, just like we had before. Ad matay mutar lahachzir. Let's say someone does cheat you. You get to go back and say, I want to cancel it. How much time do you have? So remember, before by clothing, we said you have enough time until you show it. It was machloket, right? Rabbi Tarfon said it the whole day. And the Chachamim said until you can show it to a neighbor or a friend who knows what this thing might be worth. Our Mishnah does not say that. Our Mishnah adds a whole new angle. And our Mishnah says, bikrachim, well, if you live in the big city, like Riverdale, then ad kadeshir el shulchani. Until you go to the bank, you show it to the money changer, and they tell you, they lift your coin up, or they might weigh it, and they'll say, is this a legitimate coin or not a legitimate coin? But bakfarim, if you live in a village, there's no one there to check out your money. And so then it's ad arvei Shabbatot. You have until Erev Shabbat, because of course Erev Shabbat is when everybody goes to the store and they do all the shopping, and that's where you have a chance to verify the true value of the coin. So that's, you have till the end of the week. Imhaya makira, continues the Mishnah, Shavua Tov, Robert. Imhaya makira, if the person recognizes the coin and says, oh yeah, this is my coin, and it turns out that it weighs less than it was supposed to weigh, afilu la'achar shnemasar chodesh, even if it's more than a year has passed, mikabla himenu, he can accept it from you, he should accept it from you, maybe, we'll see in the Gemara, ve'ein lo alav ela tarumot, and you only can complain about this. Like, Gemara is going to ask what we're talking about, because if he accepts your coin, why are you complaining? And finally, the final halacha in the Mishnah is that noheg notnat l'maaser sheni. It's a fascinating also halacha. Remember that maaser sheni, Robert, we're on the Mishnah on top of Nembed Amud Aleph, 5th line. You can give this coin. So you have a coin that basically is not legit, right? It weighs, it has rubbed off a bit, it has been ruined, burned in a fire, it is ruined, it's some of the metal or whatever material is lost. And so it doesn't weigh, it's not true weight. So it's worth less than what it's supposed to be. It says a sela, and really it's 5/6 of a sela, let's say, okay? Says the Mishnah, and we'll discuss this more, you can still use that for Maaser Sheni. Remember, Maaser Sheni is where you take your peirot and you mechalel them, you exchange the Kedusha onto money. Even if the money is deficient money, that's okay. We'll see the parameters in the Gemara. You can be notna the Maaser Sheni, you can use it for Maaser Sheni, ve'ein choshesh, you don't have to worry about it being a bad coin. She'enu ela nefesh ra'ah. Because someone who doesn't accept this is really just a bad-spirited person, meaning it generally should be accepted in commerce, and therefore it has the category of a matbeya, of a coin. But some people will say no because they're just tightwads. But that's just a nefesh ra'ah. So that is our Mishnah.
Says the concept that with a coin, if you're pulled out, certainly from a Meiser Rishon, you destroy the coin or you throw it in the ocean, right? Maybe not Meiser Sheni, but that's common that once you pull down the fruit or so forth on the coin, you destroy the coin.
Yeah, that's that. I mean, that's more. Remember, maybe, but Maaser Sheni, of course, is money that you eat in Jerusalem, so you don't have to use.
I guess
you have to give to a Kohen, a Levi, sorry, and you have to find the Levi or Truma.
But you can you destroy the coin.
Correct. We're not going to get to today, but eventually we could get there. Because the Gemara is going to get to what we do today. We actually rely on this Gemara in Jerusalem, in Israel. Ask the Gemara, Verminu. And again, our Mishnah said, up to what amount, I'll read our Mishnah again, how much can a coin be missing in its value? And it does not count as onah. So we said up to a sixth, which we think means it could be a sixth missing, and that's fine. Only if it's more than that is a problem. But the Breita had a different formulation, because the Breita says, Verminu, it says, ad kama tehasela chasera v'yeba. How much is missing, and it will be onah? And then the Breita continues with the same words as our Mishnah. A sixth, the 24th, the 12th, implying that a sixth is onah, or a 12th is, right? So it says the different language. Rav Papa, no. It says Rav Papa, of course, a sixth, or a 12th, or a 24th, depending on the Tana, is onah. But our Mishnah was counting, saying up to one amount going to be missing until it becomes onah. But once it gets to that point, it's onah. So I'll read that inside. I'm Rav Papa. Lokashya Tana Didan, our Mishnah that we learned earlier today, Kachashav Mimata Lamala. It's saying from a small loss to a larger loss. If it's missing 1/48th, 1/36th, up till 1/24th, then it becomes onah. And Tana Bra, the Tana of the Breita, Kachashav Milamala Lamata, it's saying how high. If it's 1/6, that's a problem. If it's 1/24th, that's a problem. Now, ask the Gemara, why does there Mishnah Besela? Why is it in this Mishnah where we talk about coins, depligi? We have a three-way machloket about how much it is. And when we had the previous Mishnah about objects, there was no machloket. Everyone said a sixth. Okay, leave out the third. Mishnah Betalit, delo pligi. Why do we have a machloket? Is there something different between a coin and a talit? Amar Rava, no, there's no difference at all. There's three opinions in our Mishnah. One of the opinions is Rabbi Shimon, who says it's a sixth, and the Mishnah of the talit was Rabbi Shimon, who said it's a sixth. But it's true that the other Tanaim would have argued about a talit also. So says Rava, man Tana talit. Who is the Tana of the early Mishnah about talit, which said that onah, cheating, is a sixth? That was Rabbi Shimoni of our Mishnah. So in fact, our Mishnah just happens to speak out more Tanaim. That Mishnah doesn't, but there's no real difference. Abaye says, I disagree. It's not a coincidence that there's 3 opinions in our Mishnah and 1 opinion in the previous Mishnah, because, says Abaye, talit, ad shtut machul inish. People forgive. When you sell an object and you overprice, you understand to some extent that when you go to a store, you're getting ripped off a little bit. But when you have money, right, when you go to the bank and say, give me 100 ones, and they give you 98 ones, you don't accept that, right? That is currency. So the amount that you might be willing to accept, remember that all ona'ah is mechila. It's on the assumption that less than this amount the person forgives, because halachically, without that, you can't give anything less. A penny less would be a problem. But we assume that in commerce, when you shop, something's going to be a little bit above or below. But by money, people are much less lenient, says Abaye, because the Amri Inchi, there's a famous saying, ashik legabech, right? You should be willing to get ripped off a little bit for your clothing. Vishaveh the karsech, but get good value when you're eating, right? Meaning, what does that mean? That when you're buying clothing, you understand sometimes you need this clothing, you're in a rush. It's worth it, even if the thing, you can go to another store and get it for $20, you'll pay $25. But once you have a coin, it should be worth almost exactly as what you want. Sella, a coin, given to those sagi since it's not what it's supposed to be, people don't forgive as easily. Okay, that's possible. That's Abaye's answer. Kufa. Now let's go back and read.
Why would you accept even a 24, a 96? They're 101, 1,000. You shouldn't accept anything.
Again, I think this is where it gets a little complicated, right? Because in our terms, things are much more defined. But you have to remember that in those times, all I can say, not that I lived then, honestly, is that they had a lot less uncertainty, right? Every sellout you picked up, it wasn't minted by a factory, maybe by the government. You know what I mean? Like there was always some give and take in that, and people accept that. People accept that there's some value that goes up and down. We're gonna see in a second that even though there's value that goes up and down, so there's a couple important points here, right? One is that the question is, what did you get, right? I was cheated out of this. I was supposed to be paid 4 and I only got paid 3.8, right? The other thing is that money loses its shame of money, loses its value if it no longer reflects what it's supposed to be, right? So there's a difference between an object, or you can have, clothing that gets old and worn. It's the same clothing, it's just worth less. But money, when it becomes worn, is no longer currency. Right, so we're going to see that there's a point where money actually has to be taken off the table, and that's very relevant. But at this point, we're just talking about the value in the same way that when you buy clothing or you buy peyrot or you buy a car, and the person overcharges you, as long as you know what's happening, it's not considered to be ona'ah if it's less than a certain amount, and if it is ona'ah, then you have an option to get out of it. Let's read some of those details. Gufa says the Braita, which is the Braita we just quoted, and this is similar to our Mishnah. It says, Ad kama tehei sela, we are a third of the way down, right? Ad kama tehei sela chasera, how much can a coin be missing? V'yehei ba ona'ah. And it's considered to be that ona'ah, and therefore the sale either returns or you get your money back. Rabbi Meir says, well, it's arba isarot, isar l'dinar. Rabbi Meir says, as he did in our Mishnah, 4 isarot, isar l'dinar, which is 1/24, so 5%, 4%. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, no, it's double that. Arba pundyonot, punyan dinar, which is double, which is 2, so 1/12. Rabbi Shimon Omer, shmona punyanot, shnei punyan dinar, again, exactly like our Mishnah, which is 1/6. Now, yeter al kain. Now, if let's say, so says the Braita, let's say a coin has gone down more than this, according to whatever Tana you hold, more than the share of ona'ah. So I have a sela, and I go to somebody and I say, look, this sela is really lost a lot of its weight. It's only worth, 75 cents now. Says the Braita, mochra b'shavya. Well, then you could use it as a 75-cent piece, right? Meaning it's still a sela, it's still a coin, but just only valuable as much as it's worth. But there's a later point in which case we say you have to actually throw it away. Ad kama tipatach, how much does it go down? V'yihi rashai l'kaima, and you're still allowed to keep it. Right? Because there's a point where we say it's not even, it's like a fake coin base. It's not an underweight coin. It's no longer what it says to be. So says the Braita, Bisela ad shekel. If it's a sela, that's up to the value of a shekel, which is half of a sela. So 50%. So ona'ah might be, 5% or 10%. And between 10% and 50%, you can use the sela for what it's worth, meaning you have to be upfront about it. If you go to someone and say, here's $1, and it turns out it's 75 cents, then the deal is canceled. But if you go to him and say, look, I owe you $3 and I have these $4 coins, I'm just turning sellers into dollars, that are each worth 75 cents. Can I pay you with this? Then he has to accept it. But if it gets to be below half, then you actually have to throw it away. You can't use it at all. We'll see why in a second. But a dinar, which is a quarter of a sela, just for the record, then you can keep it up till a quarter of its value. Ad rova. Of course, the Gemara is going to ask later why a sela would be half and a dinar would be a quarter, and we're actually going to say it doesn't mean that. But that's what it sounds like right now.
So wasn't there a mechanism to return today? If you have a bad coin and bad, you can go to the bank and exchange it.
We're about to get there.
And you get that, and the bank will take care of it. Can't you? Wasn't there a mechanism there for this?
Nope, I don't think so. Not in our Gemara. You'll see. Well, Gemara's going to tell you what to do with it, but it's not. There's nowhere to exchange it. Pachot mikan. Now, if it's less than that, isar, even by a tiny bit, by an isar, asur. You're not allowed to keep it around. And says the Braita Reza Loyim Kreno, you can't sell it even at face value, meaning not face value, even at current value. Right? You can't sell it lo tagar, not to a businessman, because we're afraid a trader is like a tagar. Lo haram, you can't sell it to a mafios. I keep using mafio, but like a violent person. Haram means like a violent person. Lo harag, and not to a murderer. Right? There were a bunch of murderers on the street. Nipnei, the reason is that these people are going to be miramim ba'atachirim. They're going to trick. Miramim means to trick other people. And of course, other people, I don't know about the tagar, but if if a person comes and he says, here's $20, and you're like, this looks counterfeit, and he shows you his gun, you're going to accept the $20, right? So therefore, it's inappropriate, it's lifnei iver, really, to give this money to someone who you know is unscrupulous, who's going to end up, cheating and using it at face value. So what do you do with it? Unfortunately, there's no Federal Reserve. So what you can do is, ela yikbenna, you can make a hole in it, v'yitlena b'tzavar beno b'tzavar bito, and you can put it as earrings, or I guess a necklace for your son or your daughter. So if you got to buy your kid jewelry, that's the best you can do with it. So we can save money on Pesach jewelry. Okay. So basically, you got to take it out of circulation. There's nothing to do with it. We're going to see later. You can melt it down too.
Is the Isar, is that a further degradation of the dinar or the seller?
Yeah. Isar is like a minimum. Isar is like a very small amount. So we're saying even if it's even a tiny bit below that, the Gemara is going to ask, what do you mean a tiny bit below? Why can't you just say instantaneously? What do you mean it has to be an Isar? So that is the Braita. What we just quoted, this whole thing was the Braita. Says, let's analyze this whole Braita, right? Amar. First of all, you said that when do you have to get rid of the money? If it's besela ad shekel. If it's a sela up to a shekel, which is half a sela, so 50% loss. But if it's a dinar, up to a quarter, up to ad rova, a quarter. Says, why would one be 25% and one be 50%? Maishna besela ad shekel, maishna bedinar ad rova. Why would you say sela is 50% loss and a dinar is 25%? Amar Abai, you're right. It doesn't mean that. When it says rova, remember that a sela is 2 shekel and a shekel is 2 dinar. Okay, so a shekel is 2 dinar, and when a shekel goes down to a dinar, that's half of a shekel, but a quarter of a sela. So when we say rova, we mean rova shekel. We mean a quarter of a shekel. It's even one level down, meaning not a quarter of a dinar, right, which would be 25%, but a quarter of a shekel, which is double dinar. So double of a quarter is 50%. Yeah. Now, ask the Gemara, that seems like a very cumbersome way to say 50%, but we're going to ask that in 1 second. Amar Rava dekanami, the katani rova of katani rivia. Rivia would mean a quarter of it. A rova means a quarter of something else, and therefore it's a quarter of a shekel. Says the Gemara, why are we saying it that way? So why the heck are we talking about shkalim? We're talking about a dinar. Say if it's a dinar, till a half of a dinar. Why say a quarter of a shekel? It's actually telling you something different. The Mishnah, the Braita is always trying to teach you. And it's teaching you something along the way. Dinar shekel. That in fact, you can have a dinar that starts off as a shekel, meaning that you have a coin that started off as one coin, right? A sela, let's say, but it basically rubs away and loses its value, and now it's a shekel. And now we're saying a shekel to a dinar. So that a coin could have started as a shekel and then lost. You rubbed it away, you burned, the Gemara is going to talk about it in a second, and it melted away, and now it becomes a dinar. And Misayeh the Rabbi Ami, this supports Rabbi Ami. Rabbi Ami, dinar habami shekel. Rabbi Ami said if you have a dinar that came from a shekel, but now is worth a dinar, you're mutar l'kaimo, you can actually keep that coin because it's 50%, right? And you're allowed to keep 50%. But a dinar habami sela asur l'kaimo. But if let's say you had a sela and it went down 75% in value and became a dinar, you can't keep it. Now, Rashi explains why not. Why can't you keep it and say it's worth 25% or 30% or 50%? So Rashi's explanation, there's other opinions in this, but Rashi's explanation is that basically the coins were wider, right? So like a quarter and a nickel and a dime, maybe a nickel's a bad example because it's thicker, right? But basically they were valued based on weight, but they also were shaped differently, right? So instead of a sela wasn't just a thicker dinar, it was a wider coin. And so when it gets worn down, basically, it's very hard for people to give a proper estimation because you get confused by the size, right? So you think because it's bigger, people do this all the time, right? They think it's bigger, so it's more valuable, even though it might weigh less. And so because of that, if a sela has been worn away, that it's only worth a dinar, you have to get rid of it because people will misvalue it and give the wrong thing. So basically, that part of the Breita, we're going to keep going with explaining the Breita, says that,
Do they think it's a shekel? That's what Rashi's saying. But shekel asi lekibule b'torah shekel.
They're going to think it's a shekel, right? So they're going to think it's more shekel. Remember, it's double a dinar. So they're going to overvalue it because, again, even though the weight, if you close your eyes and feel it, you might feel the same. But people do this all, like I said, right? You think of a large ice cream that's full of air as being more weight than a small one that's very dense, right? So that's Rashi's explanation, that because you start off with such a large coin, even if you tell people or initially people can figure out that it weighs less, they're going to misvalue it and think it's more like a shekel, which is double a dinar. So far where we are is that there's up to ona'ah is forgiven, right? Beyond ona'ah, you return the deal. Between ona'ah and cancellation, you can use the coin, but you have to be clear about what it's worth. And if you oversell it, then you have to cancel the sale or give the money back. But that difference is, okay, that difference is so 25%. Sorry, ona'ah is like say 1/6 to 1/24th, machloket in the Mishnah, a few percent, but up to 50% is where you can keep it. Beyond 50% loss, you can't even keep it. Okay? Continues the Breita, right? The 2 dots, 10 lines in the bottom. Pachot mikain isar asur. If it's even 1 isar left, less than half, it's asur to keep it. Doesn't matter, Micah, what do you mean 1 isar left? If it's below half, you should throw it away. What do you mean 1 isar below, right? He said up to half, you can keep it. Below
1
half.
isar less.
Sorry?
1 isar less.
Right, but why would it have to be 1 isar less? We said up to half, you can keep it. Below half, you can't. But what do we mean if it's even 1 isar below half, right? What does that mean? Says Abaya Hachikama. Pachta sela yoter michtei ona'ah isar asur. If you have a sela that goes below the value of ona'ah, even 1 isar, then you're not allowed to sell it as a sela. This says Rava, Amalei Rava, Yachi afilu mashunami. What do you mean even isar? Why can't it even be a tiny bit? El Amar Rava, this is what it means. Pachata sela isar ledinar asur. What it's saying is that if a sela went down an isar of to relation to a dinar, which was the opinion in our Mishnah of Rabbi Meir, which is 1/6, right? Then you have to not use it as a full sela, and that stomach Rabbi Meir. And in fact, isar is 1/24th. It's the opposite, right? If a sela went down by 1/24th, then you've got to get rid of it, and that is the opinion of Rabbi Meir in our Mishnah. And then we say you got to get rid of it. I mean, you got to get rid of using it as full value. You can only use it as partial value. Snan hatam. Now we have an interesting.
How would you know if you're using it as full value or partial value?
No, meaning because I sell you something. I'm selling you. You could also do coin exchange, but I can sell you a car that costs 40 sela. You come and give me sla'im, right? And it turns out I go to the bank and they say 5 of these sla'im are too light, and they're too light by a 24th. Right. But if I come to you and I say, look, I have 5 sla'im that are not full sla'im, and I'm going to tell you how much they're worth and I'm going to give you the value, then that's okay. Right. So it depends, of course, on how you sell it and what you say and what happens subsequently.
Okay.
Is
Now,
it isar, 1 isar less than a dinar? What does it mean?
No.
Isar li dinar.
Isar li dinar means the ratio of an isar to a dinar. There's 24 isar in 1 dinar. Right. So 1 isar of a dinar is 1/24th. There's 4 dinar, remember, in a sela. So there's 96 isar in a sela. So you could have said 4. But nonetheless, the ratio is 1 isar to a dinar. Now there's a Mishnah in Kelim that talks about something interesting, because when you take coins and they stop being valuable as coins, they can sometimes still be used as weights, right? Because they're metal. So says the Mishnah in Kelim, Sela shenifsala. Let's say you have a coin that became pasul from being a coin because it doesn't weigh enough or it got ruined. And you say, okay, I'm not throwing this away. I'm going to use it as a weight. I know how much it weighs. I'm going to use it as my standard weight. So then says the Mishnah, it's Tameya, because now it's an object. It's not a coin anymore. It's considered to be an object. Ad kama tipachat. This continues the Mishnah. How much can you allow your coin to go down in value? And you're still allowed to keep it. So if it's a sela, shnei dinarim. Again, you see how the Mishnah constantly changes just to confuse us, I think. There must be other reasons. It's different Mishnah. But we said before in our Braita a shekel. Now it says 2 dinar. Remember, a dinar and a shekel is the same thing, right? So a sela up to 2 dinar, which is 50%. Pachot mikan, now says the Braita, the Mishnah, sorry, in Kelim, if your sela goes down in value more than 50%, then yikotz. Then you've got to cut it up. You've got to destroy it, right? Yeter al kain mai. Now, what if it's above that? Now, what does above that mean? Meaning, it's gone down more than ona'ah, but less than 50%. So then, amar Rafuna, pachot miken yikotz. If it's less than 50%, you got to destroy it. Yeter al kain yikotz. But if it's above 50%, you also destroy it. So the right is just saying, what's even more than that, you have to destroy it, unless, we'll see in a second, unless you can clearly use it for something that's a little bit of less value. And Rabbi Ami says, we're going to read another Braita. Don't worry, it's going to be all clear. Pachot mikan yikotz. If it's less than 50%, you destroy it. Yeter ken yikayim. But if it's above that, you're actually allowed to keep it around, and you could use it, but you have to, of course, tell people what it's worth. And the reason that Rabbi Ami says that is that people are not going to make a mistake and think it's worth a seller. So they're not going to make that mistake. Okay?
Well, how can Rav Huna say yeter ken yikotz? Because you should be able to use it if it's more than 50%.
So, what, Rabbi, meaning because
Rav Huna.
So we're going to see in a second. The Rav Huna disagrees with what we said earlier, and Rav Huna holds that even if it's above that amount, you have to, you're not allowed to keep it around because we're afraid that people are going to confuse it.
So what is Rav Huna's opinion in general regarding the inability to use money? At what point one has to destroy it? One can't use it anymore, according to Rav Huna.
So we think now, again, it's not going to be so clear at the end, to be honest, that anything above ona'ah, right? So anything above ona'ah, according to Rav Huna, you can't use it, but it depends on the specific coin, right? So we're going to see that it depends on whether you're afraid that people are going to mistake it and not realize that it's worth less, right? And then it would be very coin dependent. Like we said, a sela is pretty wide, and so therefore we're worried that people are going to mistake it. So really it depends on what the mistaken value is. I think that would depend on each coin. But let's keep reading. Says the Gemara on the top of Nun Bet Amud Bet, 52. Yeter al kain, if it's worth more than this, right? This is a Braita, sorry, right? So I'm quoting a Braita. Metzia, right? The Braita says, Yeter al kain, if the coin is worth more than the amount that is, sorry, if the coin has gone down in value, right? More than the amount of ona'ah, Mokra b'shavya. Well, that's what we think it means, right? So that's how I explained it before. If a coin has gone down in value, let's say ona'ah is 1/12. Let's just pick a number. And the coin has gone down in value. Can you turn off the oven? And the coin has gone down in value more than 1/12, meaning it's 1/8, let's say. Then you can use it, but you have to use it at its current value, right? Meaning, say, this coin, which is supposed to be $1, is really 90 cents. So now that seems to go against Rav Huna, right? My love, what that seems to mean, which is how we explained it before, that it actually went down more than ona'ah. So meaning, and you're allowed to use it and keep it and sell it. You just have to give the true value. But Rav Huna just said you have to get rid of it. So how does he explain that?
Well, that was my question.
Well, good question. That's the Gemara. Says the Gemara, that's not what it means. That's not how Rav Huna understand the Braita. The Braita, according to Rav Huna, means lo yitera, meaning more, and more can mean less, right? So this is where it gets very confusing. Meaning it's worth more than the ona'ah. Ona'ah would be 1/12. This is, so let's say $1 would be 88 cents. This is worth 92 cents. So it's gone down less than ona'ah. Yitera dekati lo pichtak bichtei onata. It still hasn't gone down enough of the ona'ah, and says the Braita, according to Rav Huna, mochra b'shavya. That's where the Braita says you can give the value. Meaning, according to Rav Huna, The way it works is that if your dollar is worth 95 cents, you can use it. Everyone agrees you can use it. That's not ona'ah. But according to Rav Huna, you can use it, but only as 95 cents.
Yeah.
According to what we explained earlier, no,
You
people
use it.
forgive it. You can use it up to a 6 or up to a 12 as full value. But Rav Huna disagrees with that. And he says that no, up to ona'ah, you use it, but only at what it's really worth. Ona'ah, canceled. And above ona'ah, you have to throw away the coin. Forget about it. You got to get rid of it because people are going to make a mistake. Ask the Gemara Metzia, what about another Breita? Ad kama tipatach, this was the Breita that we had earlier, right? It said, how much does a coin have to go down? And you're allowed to keep it. Bisela ad shekel. It can go down from a sela to 50%. Now understand, 50%, if it was 50%, at some point it was 75%, right? I'm sorry, it went down 50%. So at some point, it went down 25%, or 30%, or 35%. Why didn't you have to throw it away then, according to Rav Huna, right? So my love, the pichet porta porta, it went down slowly, and as it goes down, according to Rav Huna, once you get to ona'ah, you got to throw it away. So what do you mean till 50%? There's no such thing as 50%. This is where no, the nafal lenura. It's talking about where it fell into a fire. The ifchat b'chad. It went down at one time, so it went from 100 to 50 because it got burned up basically, and it lost it melted half of its value. So that's what we're talking about, where it's that extent. Okay. Amar. Now let's go back to what you can do with it. It said yikbena, you make a hole in the coin, right? Once it gets below this value, you got to get rid of it. V'yitzlena b'tsavar beno b'tsavar bito. You can use it as jewelry. You can put on your kid's neck, your necklace. Veraminu. What about there's a fine Breita which says that once the money is below whatever value, either half or ona'ah, depending on how you feel, lo yasenu mishkal b'mishkalotav. You shouldn't use it as a weight. Why shouldn't you use it as a weight? Again, because someone's going to come and find it and say, oh, this is $1, and use it as $1. You shouldn't throw it amongst your silver scraps that you're going to melt down, again, because people are going to find it and use it at face value. And don't put it for a necklace. So the Breita very clearly says you're not allowed to keep it around and make it into a necklace. Ella, you know what you got to do with the coin? Oh, yischok, you can grind it down. Oh, yitoch, I'm not really sure what yitoch means if someone has a word, but it's some way of destroying it. There's a machlok. They quote on the side that the Rambam has a girsa of yachtoch, which means cut it up. Rashi says, don't say yachtoch. So Rashi clearly did not like that girsa. But yitoch is some version of crushing a coin. Oh, yikots, or you can cut it, or you can make a hole in it. Oh, yolich liyam melech. Yokotz means cut it up. Sorry, into
Why don't you just throw it in the ocean like other?
There we go. We got it. You can throw it to Yam HaMelech. We talk elsewhere that they actually didn't love throwing it in the ocean because then gold diggers would find it or whatever. But the Yam HaMelech would actually wear it down and destroy it, right? So, anyways, throw it somewhere where no one's going to get it. So, but we just said you can make a necklace. Amir Belazar, Amir Rafuna, Amir Belazar, Rafuna said, Lokash, there's different kinds of necklaces, right? So if you think about it, very often when you make a necklace, you cut a hole, not very often, I don't make any necklaces, but in someone who made a necklace out of a coin, you make a little hole at the edge of the coin because you want it to hang down. But if you do that, then someone could take the necklace, shave off the end where there's a hole and pass it as a coin. So that's not good enough. Making a necklace at the fringes, we're afraid people are still going to use it. But if you make a hole in the middle, then everyone's happy. Kan be'emtza, kan min hatzad. It depends on whether you make a hole in the necklace, the hole in the coin in the middle or the outside. But again, the point is pretty clear, which is that this coin is not effective and it's deficient. And the question is, unscrupulous people are going to pass it off as a good coin. So you have to do anything in your power now that you have it to prevent that from happening. You can't just say, I'm done with this, or I'm putting it in my scrap pile, because we're afraid someone's going to come and find it, maybe you, maybe your kid, whatever, and pass it off as a regular coin. You have to make it so that everybody knows it's valueless. If you make a hole smack down the middle and put it in a necklace, people are going to know that. But if you make a hole at the side or you use it to hang it a little bit, that's not sufficient. Continues the Mishnah, or the Breita. This is the Mishnah. An matay mutar lachzir. How much time do you get to go back on the deal if you were cheated out? If you live in a big city, the amount of time it takes you to go to a bank and show it to a banker, right? A shulchani. And if you live in a village, you get till Friday because that's when you go to the market and people sort of assess your coins. Says Gemara, 1 second. Remember, before we talked about clothing, or we talked about other objects. We didn't mention anything about cities, villages, towns. We said enough time to show it to your friends. So Maishna Bisela de Mafli. Why is it by coins that we say there's difference between the cities and the villages? And Maishna Bitalit lo Mafli. But by clothing or other objects, we don't make any distinction. So Amar Abaya, well, you want to know something? And this is the opposite of what Abaya said before, so that's why some changed earlier. Ki tnan nami matitim b'talit b'krachim tnan. The Mishnah of Talit was referring to a city. So in a city, you always have someone who knows what something's worth. You go find them, you do it, just like money. But obviously, if you lived in a village and you had no one to show your purchase to, you would get enough time until you showed it to a person. Rava says, no. It's a little bit different because Talit, kol inish kimla b'gaveh. Everybody knows how much a clothing or food is worth. But money, right? You have to be an expert. I don't know how much the money is. I can't weigh it. I don't have scales and I don't have the expertise. But selak, even since it's not ubiquitous that people know how much it's worth, ela shulchani, only a professional, a money changer. Hilkach, therefore, in krachim, where you have a money changer, then you just have enough time to go to the bank and check it out. Ad shir and shulchani, but bikfarim deleka shulchani ad arvei shabbatot salkin l'shuka. Because on Friday you would go to this market like everyone does today, and you would be able to find a professional. But by clothing, it's much more. You just need to find a neighbor. You just need to find anyone, even if you live in a village. Unless you're in Antarctica or on Mars, right? You should be able to find someone to tell you whether you were cheated or not cheated.
What was your point regarding Abai? Was Abai contradicting what Abai said earlier?
Yeah, so remember earlier we asked a similar question
right.
about that. Previous Mishnah said a 6, and our Mishnah had 3 different values, right? So Abaya and Rava's answers were opposite there, right? Abaya there said, "Oh, our Mishnah is," I think Abaya was opposite. Did I mistake it? But yeah, right. Rava said, "Oh, the previous Mishnah was Rabbi Shimon." Right, but that there's no differences between the two, and Abaya was the one who said earlier, "Oh no, a talit is different than money because money you forgive or you don't forgive." Right, and here we just have the opposite pattern. Right here, Abaya says, "Oh, this is just one opinion of the earlier Mishnah." Right, that the earlier Mishnah was talking about cities, and we're talking about here about cities. And Rava says, "Oh, there's a fundamental difference between coins and clothing." So I just pointed out the Rif, if you have like earlier, says that we switch around earlier, Abaya and Rava, but you could just see why.
Are you saying that Abaya and Rava changed their opinions here regarding the cities and the villages?
About whether, so we have 2 Mishnayot. One Mishnah is talking about objects and one Mishnah is talking about money.
Right.
And the question is, are the rules the same for money and objects? So
right.
we have several differences between them. But the 2 notable ones is that the amount of money for ona'ah was different between the 2 Mishnayot, right? One Mishnah said a 6, and one Mishnah said 3 different opinions.
Right.
And the amount of time you have to return what differed in one Mishnah from the other. One Mishnah said a fixed time, and this Mishnah says depends on whether you live in a city or a town.
Right.
So Abaya and Rava both had explanations for it. What I was pointing out is that, like here, Abaya's explanation is that there's no difference between money and other objects. It just, for whatever reason, that Mishnah was referring to one case. And Rava said, no, there's a difference in money because you have people to show it to, you don't have people to show it to, and other objects. So the Rif says that the earlier debate about Abaya and Rava had the same parallel, that Abaya was saying there's no difference between money and other objects, and Rava was saying there is a difference, and that's why there's an argument. But that necessitates switching the opinion of Abaya and Rava in the earlier case. Continues the Gemara. Hey, we're halfway through at 2 dots. Hey, we said im haya makira, if the person recognizes the coin, and you go back to the guy and say, "Oh, by the way, you gave me this $20 a year ago, and it was fake or it was too light," then he should return it. She's supposed to give it back. Says, "One second. Where are we? What do you mean 12 months? Hey, where are you? Where are you? If you're in a villa, in a town, in a city, in a big city, then you get like 2 hours to go to the bank. What do you mean a year later? Ibik farim, you said you get till Friday, right? But that's not a year. No. What we're saying is midat chasidut shanukan. That if the person says to you, "Oh my gosh, I didn't realize my money wasn't good," because of course it's hard to know, then it would be a nice thing if you, the seller, gave the guy back the difference. As long as you don't think he's lying to you, right? You can recognize the coin, because otherwise you're like, how do you know that was my dollar? But if you remember, I had a coin, it was minted, it was a certain way, and the guy comes to you and says, look, I waited and it weighed less. Even a year later, you should pay him back. Says, well, okay, that seems nice, but look at the next words of the Mishnah. It says, Ein lo alav ela taromat. He can only have a claim against you. He's got no monetary claim. He could just complain that you're a bad person. So, Leman, what do you mean? Who's complaining about who? Ila chassid, if you're talking about the seller who was kind enough to be generous and 2 years later give you a refund, how are you angry at him for, right? Lo kibuli, where am I? Lo kibuli, I'm sorry, I take it back. If it's the seller who can be angry with this buyer who came back 2 years later and said, look, your coin wasn't good, and you're like, okay, I'll give you back your money, but why'd you show up 2 years later? Well, don't give him back money and then be angry with him, right? Low kibuli, don't be passive aggressive. Don't accept it from him and below taromati, and then you won't be angry at him. Don't I'll give you money, but I'm angry with you. Ella lehich dekavlamine. So you're saying it's the one who accepted the money, meaning the buyer is angry. Why would the buyer be angry? He got his money back, right? The butter to bekavlamine, after he took money back from the guy and he gave him all his money, taromit he should be angry. That's why no. What we're saying is there's two cases. Hachikama. Ha'acher, right? This guy, if you give back the money even a year later, you're a nice guy. But somebody else who says, no dice, it's 2 years later, you're too late for your return window, you have no claim on that person. Even though he don't take your coin back and say, okay, I'll give you a better dollar, and I don't make it up for you, you have no claim on that person, except you can be angry with him because you missed the window. Your job is in business. Someone gives you 10 coins, check out those coins and go to him right away if they're a problem. You can't come back 2 years later and expect him to pay you back. If he's a nice guy and he wants to, that's great. But he doesn't have to do that. And all you can say is, I'm upset.
Well, what are you doing for 2 years with that coin? Wouldn't you have spent that coin on food or on you're holding that coin for 2 years and then you wake up, that was a bad coin, and you remember which merchant it was. After 2 years, didn't you do a lot of shopping in the meantime?
That's why the Mishnah says the words, Im hayam makira, if you recognize the coin. I don't know, maybe you took a trip. You sold your house, the guy gave you 10 sla'im, you went away to Israel, you came back 2 years later to buy more real estate, and you looked out and the sla'im are not worth what you thought they'd be worth. But that's not okay. You cannot demand money back because you missed your window. Your window is right away. Final thing in our Mishnah was notna the maaser sheni, that you can put maaser sheni on this coin, which is not full value. You don't have to worry because it's only a bad soul. What does that mean? Amar of Papa, what that means is Shema Mina, Hai man de mukim azuzi, a person who's very makbid and says, I won't accept coins unless they're 100% value. That's a pretty rotten person. Mikri nefesh ra'ah. He's called not rotten, but a bad-spirited person. Because it's normal for coins to lose a little value. Sure, that's just the way of commerce. You shouldn't be so stickler for that. You could be, but you shouldn't be. But hanimili udesagile. That's of course only true if it's useful, right? Meaning you don't have to accept coins that you can't use, right? No one's asking you to be a sucker. But as long as it's something that other people would accept, you should be part of that accept. Now, now this supports what our Mishnah just said. Supports chizkiah. Our Mishnah said that you can take a coin that's a low value coin, right? A sela that's worth only, say, 96 cents, okay? Less than onaf, according to everybody. And you can take your maaser sheni and put it on that coin. We think it means you can put on that coin at the full value, at the face value, at 100. So you can take your maaser sheni and say, my maaser sheni, it's worth 100 whatever. One sela should be mechulal on this coin, which is a little bit less than a sela. That supports, says the Gemara, Motzaei the chizkiah. That supports chizkiah. Damar chizkiah. You know what chizkiah said? Parta. Did I skip some words? No. If you come to Jerusalem, once you have this coin of maaser sheni, and you say, okay, I want to take my sela and make it into smaller coins, right? They're not going to give you 100 cents for your dollar because your dollar is not worth 100; it's worth 96. So parta b'shavya. They're going to give you small coins of the face, not the face value, the weight value, which is 96 in my case. But if you come to put your coin, your produce on the coin, you can be mechalel at full value is what we think it means now. This is where my comment. How could that be? Right? What do you mean even by that? Hachikam, this is what we think it means. 10 lines from the bottom. Afal pi, even though parta b'shavya, that when you go to Jerusalem with this 96 cents pruta, 96 cents sela, again, I'm obviously changing what it means, but you take this 96% sela, you're only going to get 96 prutot from it, or 96% from it. But still, even though it's not going to be full value, when you change your produce onto the coin, you can do full value. So you basically are cheating hektish, not hektish, you're cheating yourself, right? Because you get to eat in Jerusalem, but you're cheating the system. Let's put it that way. And that implies the memra the saver Chizkiya the mizalzalinan b'maser sheni. Chizkiya holds the maser sheni you can fool around with. You can play tricks with maser sheni. So maser sheni is basically something which you don't have to be exact with. You can take your potatoes that are worth $200 and say they're worth around 180. You know what I mean? Like you can be, that's what mizalzel means. You can be cheap, but you can also be inexact and basically take maser sheni and put it on the coin, even though the coin is only worth 96%, you're putting 100% on that. And so that's permitted. So that's somewhere, is that really true? Should we keep going? We'll do one, yeah. You know what? I'm going to stop here because this is going to get us into a new sugya, well, a continuation of a sugya called mizalzalinam b'maser sheni. Can you play fast and loose with exchanging things from maser sheni? There's an opinion that you can. I think that's how we paskin, but there's an opinion that we can't. And we're going to continue tomorrow from that point, which is.
But he's only cheating himself then. If he goes to Jerusalem with this coin, he can only buy 96 for it. So
right. Well, I mean, you could say he's only cheating himself, but the reality is that he's taking 100 of food and putting it on the coin. So he's cheating the food a little bit, but yes, he's not cheating somebody else because he was going to eat it himself. But we're going to get to this tomorrow. So it's a big sugya of maser sheni, which is why I'm stopping here, about really how exact you have to be when you exchange to maser sheni. Is it super strict like truma or like maser rishon, or is it a little bit looser? Which is how we, like I said, I think we're going to paskin that way, but it's a little bit looser and you could play around a little bit around the edges. So we'll pick it up here tomorrow morning. We're learning early, 7:45. I hope everyone has finished their Pesach cleaning.
Oh, no.
And can join us tomorrow morning, 7:45. I just want to point out, I guess I'll say it again tomorrow, but we're doing in person on Yom Tov. So I don't know. I feel like at least 2 of the people on this Zoom right now are going to be out of the city. Ken, I don't know if you're around on Yom Tov, but we're learning in person because
Where?
At HIR an hour before Mincha.
Where?
I guess the 3rd floor is where we usually learn.
Yeah, I'll be out.
Miriam's away. Robert, I know, is in a different city. So,
Well, I just want to ask one more, if you don't mind. On the point, I understood everything else, but were you saying before that Abai changed his opinion here with this particular bright here that we discussed regarding money versus clothing?
So
everything I understood, there's a difference between money and clothing, different how long and how when, different opinion. I know that from previously in the Mishnah, but it didn't seem to me that Abai actually, he was saying here regarding the clothing, the talit, you examine the clothing, you take it to the city, whatever. I didn't know that he actually changed his opinion, his view here.
So you can certainly read the Gemara the way it is. There's no problem doing that. But the consistency is, how do you view the issue is, how do you view the 2 Mishnayot? One Mishnah was talking about money, one Mishnah was talking about objects, right? So there are differences. There are 2 fundamental differences between the 2 Mishnayot, which is, one is what's the amount that is ona'ah, right? And
right.
How much time do you have to give it back?
Right, I understand.
So both Abai, if you look at Abai and Rava collectively, there's one answer to both of those differences that say there's really no difference, right? It's the same, but there's multiple opinions about those things, and the previous Mishnah only quoted one opinion, right? That's one explanation.
Oh, so we're assuming that one opinion was valid for all the scholars, basically.
Correct. That there are multiple opinions, but the previous
one opinion regarding the city versus the krachim versus the right.
And the other explanation is that there are differences between money and clothing in fundamental ways, either that they're valued differently, that they're viewed differently. So both are valid answers, right? And Rava gave one and Abaya gave another. And what the Rif does is he switches it around so that Abaya in both cases gave the answer that says The Mishnayot, in fact, don't disagree. There's no difference between clothing and money. One Mishnah quoted one opinion and one Mishnah quoted many opinions. And Rava is the one in both cases who says that the reason one Mishnah said one and one Mishnah said the other is because there is a difference between, a different difference, but there is a difference between money and clothing.
So the money.
Okay, the difference.
Okay.
Sorry if I confuse everyone with that, but Shavua Tov, get a good night's sleep. We'll learn tomorrow morning at 7:45.
Shabbat Tov. Thank you.
Oh, wait.